Welcome back, everyone, to the Unclassified Podcast. I'm here with Preston Stewart. It's another glorious week, and we have so many things to talk about. But before we get into it, remember to like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, and tell us what you think. Preston, I don't know if you saw the newspaper, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. It doesn't matter, all of them. The word on the street is that not only are we vindicated, but we've never been more right. Trump and Al-Sharaa, or as when we were talking about him, he was going by the name Jolani, met, and we joked that Trump would be the Lion of Damascus. And sure enough, he lifts off saying he is the Lion of Damascus. Donald Trump is. Any thoughts on our oracle into the future?
Clearly a big win for us. Probably is the best takeaway. I haven't seen enough reporting on that aspect of this quite yet, so we'll make sure we hammer that. I do want to note, May 14th, 2025 is when Al-Sharaa met with President Trump, met with the U.S. president, shook his hand. That same date, May 14th, 2005, exactly 20 years ago, he was arrested by U.S. forces in Iraq for his ties to al-Qaeda. So 20-year comeback complete. That is, got a lot of mixed thoughts on this Jolani situation. Also, I like the name Jolani more than Al-Sharaa, so I'm probably going to stick with that. But yeah, let's save some of that because I feel like there's a lot to talk about on that front.
Yes. All right, well, let's get into our fighter jets before we get into this trip to the Middle East. I don't know if you saw this, but Trump is now redesigning the fighter jets for the Air Force, saying yesterday that he doesn't believe in stealth, and he thinks that the stealth doesn't work. And so once the stealth doesn't work after a month, then you're just stuck with an ugly plane. He also complained that the F-35 has one engine. He said, quote, "I don't like single engines." And so he says he's going to put a second engine into it, and he's going to call it the F-55. It's unclear at the moment if the F-55 is a real program. I don't know if the Pentagon knows of the F-55 yet, but this is something he said. We do know that we're getting a new F-22. That was something he announced. But it's all the other stuff in the periphery that's causing pandemonium. So, I mean, it kind of reminds me, the debate over the stealth single engine, it reminds me of that scene from the movie The Dictator. Have you ever seen it? Where he says the missile has to be pointy. It's too round, you know? Yeah. It reminds me of that. Or like Homer Simpson builds a car or designs a car. Well, you know, one or the other. What do you think of this?
There's some pictures that just came out like a week ago. Well, to be fair, they come out like every couple months, but the most recent ones a couple weeks ago. Kim Jong-un getting down into a tank and pointing out to his generals, like, here's where this goes, and here's how the soldiers will sit, and here's why this is important for fighting wars. And it makes me think of that, where, like, leaders, they can have an opinion for sure, but we've got a lot of people better versed in making these decisions. I haven't heard much about us, like, moving away from stealth or redoing these aircraft in this manner. It makes me a little bit nervous that he just like decided it and said it, because let's be honest, a lot of things happen that way, where something is just said out loud and then all of a sudden like policy shifts to get behind it. So, just kind of hoping that there's good people there to say, let's let this one slide. We got some other things to work on.
It's so interesting to me. This is like a $2 trillion program, 40 years in the making. And he just goes, I know better. Add another engine. I mean, why stop at 2? Why not add 4 or 5, 7, 8 at this point? It is fascinating. But there's quite a bit of lore. Lore? Am I saying that right? Lore? Yeah.
We'll see.
Lore when it comes to Trump and the fighter jets, at least with the stealth component. So I don't know if you remember watching the F-47 announcement, I'm sure. He is very skeptical of stealth because even then he was saying, people tell me it's invisible, but I don't know if I believe it. And so it seems the president thinks that stealth means it goes invisible and you can't see it. And he obviously, if you think that, he can see the plane. So he goes, it doesn't work.
Out there, yeah.
I thought
all these idiots think it's invisible, and it's not. I can see it clear as day.
Yeah.
Well,
he gets one plane free, and he thinks he's an engineer now. Anyway, so let's get into the Middle East trip. All right. So, Preston, Israel. What is going on here? So, To give the viewers some lead in, and I'm sure you all are very informed here. Are we fighting? Are we like beefing right now? What is going on between the U.S. and Israel? Because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it seems like there's some beef here.
It's yes. This is one where you've got to read between the lines a little bit, so you're at risk of reading too much into things. But in the last week, there's been 4 or 5 pretty significant issues that point to a bit of a rift in the relationship. And kind of the tipping point for me was when we started to see Ambassador Huckabee, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, and some other very pro-Israel figures in the United States and in Israel talking about how there's no problems here, everything's fine. And when you start seeing those messages, it's like, oh, wait a minute. So anyways, what we've seen just in recent days, big picture, we've got the Iranian nuclear talks. And Israel is by far and away more hawkish on that than we are. Even when you get into more of the Iran hawks in the U.S. administration now or in D.C., they're not quite as aggressive. And like Israel had an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post today saying, like, no, the answer is military strikes, not diplomacy. So, like, their hawkishness is very different. It is a level beyond our hawkishness, and it does look like Trump is trying to find some way to talk through a nuclear deal. Whether that ends up being good or bad is a different story, but that's part one, and I would say probably the biggest one. But then on top of that, Trump just announced removing sanctions from Syria. Apparently, Netanyahu is not happy about that, and Trump did it anyways. Historically, you wouldn't hear that. You would hear that we're on board with Israel and we're kind of lockstep with everything. And I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of expected that's what this administration would be. But we're seeing some differences here. So the removal of sanctions from Syria, we've got the ceasefire with the Houthis. Israel was thrown off by that. We did not tell them that we were entering that agreement. And you could say, well, who cares? But there's a direct impact to Israel there. So the minute that we stopped firing on the Houthis and the Houthis in turn stopped firing on us, they diverted all of their resources north and have now increased missile strikes against Israel. Sometimes we were intercepting those at times when they went over the Red Sea. So it was kind of this, like, called a 2-on-1 fight, U.S. and Israel versus the Houthis. We just walked out without telling Israel, which, again, they're a friend of ours. So however you feel about that engagement, like, there were a lot of Israelis very upset about that move. And then on top of all of this, it looks like yesterday, Secretary Rubio was starting to pressure Israel a little bit about bringing more humanitarian aid in to the Gaza Strip. He started talking about, in this article, they said he didn't quite go so far as to blame Israel for the humanitarian crisis, but he was close. And he was much closer than anyone in this administration has been. So, again, each one of those things, interesting on their own, probably more like gossip than anything else. But when you layer them all on top of each other, oh, I'm sorry, there's one little piece left out. Trump is going through the Middle East. He's not stopping in Israel. Again, on its own, not that big of a deal. But when you put all of these together just in the span of the last 7 days, I don't know if we're trying to send a message, if there's a deliberate break being made, but you can't ignore all of that. What do you think?
Oh, I fully agree. I think I've been trying to get to the core of what the fight is about. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today that said it comes down to the Israelis just don't have the money to give to Trump. But in addition to that, he's very annoyed by them because they keep giving him asks, and this bothers him, I guess. I wonder if that is the case. But also, you know, I've seen some theories that, like, Netanyahu wants to occupy Gaza and Trump wanted to turn into a resort or whatever. I don't know how, you know, how true that is. There are other people who are just saying that, you know, Trump's not an ideologue. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about Zionism. He doesn't care about any of the other stuff. He is simply out to get himself, and so if he can get more allies in Syria, and he loses Israel, he just doesn't care. I have no idea what's happening here. Because you're right. Going into this, I fully thought they would be in lockstep, but they are entirely not.
I wouldn't say they're not in lockstep. I mean, we've pretty much been hands-off when it comes to Israel's operations in Gaza. We're not pressuring them to do, like, anything at all. They're getting ready to kick off another offensive here. maybe right now. The airstrikes increased overnight, so it looks like the ground operations are getting ready to kick off. You haven't heard a word from that in the U.S. at all.
That's true.
And previously, there was a lot of pushback from across the Biden administration about, like, be careful going into Rafah, and we want more humanitarian aid. So, maybe it's splitting hairs, but I think that we are just kind of backing out of a lot of that. I think there's a possibility, if you look at Trump and say that he wants to try things a different way, which I don't think is a long shot, if he were to step back and say, look, our support and our relationship with Israel has caused us a lot of tension in the Middle East for decades. What if we didn't have that relationship? Would it improve so many other things that it comes out a net positive? And that's pretty complex. I think there's an argument to be had there that we would be abandoning an ally and maybe selling out an ally. But couldn't you see a view like that where it's saying, what if we just didn't do that thing anymore? Could the positive relationship, the positive turn with Qatar, Saudi, Iran, Syria, all of these other countries, all the Gulf states, could that shift positive enough to outweigh moving away from Israel? I don't know. It's apples to oranges in a lot of ways, but I can see that conversation.
It's a good question. If we gain normal relations with Iran through the nuclear deal, and sanctions are lifted, and everyone's on board, everyone's on the same team, it's kumbaya. Now, I don't know if that'll happen. It seems far-fetched, but the utility of Israel kind of goes down. Granted, they are a net contributor of intel on the Middle East, but if everyone's in lockstep, everyone's fighting for the same cause or getting along, I don't know what purpose Israel serves going forward.
In the U.S.
do know
strategic view?
Yeah. Yes. And I also know that Israel, if you go back to when the U.S. wasn't the hegemon, the U.S. and Israel being this close was not a thing. If you go back to the Cold War, Israel we were pals, but we kind of kept them at arm's length, and it really wasn't until the Soviets fully embraced the Egyptians that we kind of step in and put them both in our sphere. I don't know. I think Netanyahu is so damaging to Israel, and perhaps that is Trump's objection, that maybe it's like Netanyahu goes and the whole region becomes American friendly. I'm not quite sure. I am a little shocked that his first foreign trip again was to the Middle East, and it really wasn't clear what we were getting out of it. But in terms of Israel, maybe he's trying to prove a point. I don't think he particularly cares about Palestine. Maybe he does. Did you see that report from last weekend where he said that a Gulf official was telling the Middle East Eye, I think it's called, that Trump was planning to announce recognition of Palestine as a country this week, which, there's still time, but it has not happened yet. So, kind of opens Pandora's box as to what we're looking at here.
I think it's just a reshuffling of everything, right? I posted this week that we seem to be seeing a shift in this administration away from Europe and towards the Gulf states. And you can say any number of reasons why that's the case or why I'm mistaken, but it looks like it. Trump and team is pretty happy in Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi. Again, to your point, first trip, not to Europe, not to Asia, to the Middle East. He brought a big delegation, man. Everybody's there, right? Hegseth and Witkoff and Rubio. The whole team is there, minus Vance, who kind of feel like he's been sidelined a little bit for the last few weeks.
No, I think he's a designated survivor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. There you go. But either way, it looks like...
Yeah, you're right. I haven't heard from him.
It looks like we're much more focused on improving and building relations in the Middle East right now than anywhere else around the world. I don't know if I'm misreading that, but if that is the case, it's a bit of a shakeup. And it seems like kind of the direction that we can expect this administration to go.
Absolutely. On the J.D. Vance point, maybe the reason he didn't go with and he had to be the designated survivors. He killed the Pope, and then he went
Yeah.
to Israel and Pakistan, and all hell broke loose there.
Yeah,
so,
just ease up, man.
yeah, he's just got to calm down. All right, but shall we move over to Syria here? Go a little to the northeast here.
Let's
so,
do it. Yeah, this is wild.
Syria has had all sanctions. I guess it's not formal yet, but they have had, Trump has said, all sanctions going back to 1979. So everything's lifted. Talk about a liberation day. And he got this after meeting Al-Sharaa, who he described as very handsome, young, a fighter. He said, incredible past, brave guy, which I don't have any objection to what he's saying, but I just didn't expect it out of the president, you know? And so they have this whole thing, and only thing the United States asks of Syria is that they kick out the foreign terror groups and that they remove ISIS. No issue removing ISIS. I think Al-Sharaa or Jolani will lead the charge on that. I think with the foreign groups, good luck, unless they're going to redefine what they call that. But there are people in Trump's administration who are not on board with this. There are people talking in the newspaper saying we're going to slow roll it. There was a talk of an assassination plot where the United States was planning to assassinate Jolani before Trump got there. And they were warned off by the King of Jordan. That's according to a few U.S. senators. I guess there was a plot, and the King of Jordan was alerted by his intelligence, and he told them not to do that. So, that's where we're at. People in Trump's administration do not want a fresh start with Syria. They want to get something on Jolani. They want to penalize him. I don't know. I mean, should we tell the viewer? I mean, I think everyone knows his life story, but we can get into it. But, yeah, people are not pleased. People are pretty divided.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on this. I think there's too much emotional play into this. People hear Al Qaeda, they hear Islamic State, and they default to the dude is a terrorist. End of story. What are we doing? And I think it's a lot more complicated. I'm actually not all that against it. I think, look, it's been a good little stretch here for people of Syria. Like, I follow a lot of folks online that have been following Syria for 10 plus years, and they've been able to go back for the first time in a decade. And they're like recording and documenting what's happening on the streets. There are people moving back to Syria. There has been some violence, but the violence by and large at this point has not been perpetrated by the state. It's rogue actors that the Jolani government, the Al-Sharaa government, doesn't quite have control over the entire security apparatus yet. So you've still got some militant groups out there willing to fight each other and to kill people at times. Even then, it hasn't been to the scale of what we saw throughout the duration of the Civil War. Like, by just about every single metric, things are better in Syria right now. So, to me, like, okay, let's see. It seems like the guy has been on a solid... The concern right out the gate when HTS took Damascus was like, cool, here come the executions and the public floggings and Sharia law. And that didn't happen back in December. We're 6 months in. Maybe it happens in the future, but at some point, we need to look at the actual cards that we have, not the cards that we think we have, and say, if he's not doing it, he's not going to do it. Like, I just don't know that some of the arguments that I've heard are people saying that, American soldiers and veterans should be turning over in their graves because this guy has blood on his hands and now he's meeting with the president. Like, okay, things change. Did he change? Hopefully. But what good does it do to draw this hard line and say, actually, no, we don't accept him? Has to be someone else. Like, we're going to fund part of a civil war again? Are we going to help overthrow the Syrian government again? For what? Like, it just seems like all accounts except for the emotional one, this is a better setup for not just Syria, but for the United States. Like, a stable Syria is a good thing. And a big question has been, because we have previously worked with some of these groups in Syria to fight against Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, and Jolani, when he was in HTS, was taking out, at times, members of Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. In fact, there's been some debate that a few of these airstrikes taking place in the last few weeks, taking out Islamic State leadership, we may have been tipped off by Jolani and his team. Like, they're probably providing the targeting data. So if we're able to partner with them to further eradicate Islamic State, any Islamic State presence in Syria, what's the problem here? Like, it seems like a win-win-win. So I think the hate there that's coming from all over, by the way, I feel like you get a little bit of hate because it's Trump, so you're going to get people that just don't like anything that he does. But then you've also got people inside of his own party, inside of his own administration, that are upset about it. But I think it's a good move. Again, I don't really care about the whole president meeting with people, president talking to people. I think that's something that presidents do. I don't think we should, an actual terrorist leader, sure. But you're talking about the head of a government here.
I agree with you. I think, not every leader, not every person who comes up is going to be a George Washington. They're not going to be a Zelensky, right? There are people with messy pasts who take over. Al-Sharaa is a very 20th century figure. A guy who fought and then gained control of his country, a very Mao Zedong or a Ho Chi Minh or I guess Chiang Kai-shek, even though he lost, it went to Taiwan. But, maybe those aren't the greatest examples, but you understand what I'm saying, though, right? Like, it's a guy who fought and then got control of the country. Not everyone's going to be perfect. And I know that seems like really downplaying, I guess, U.S. service member deaths, but hearing Al-Sharaa speak and reading a lot of what veterans are saying, it seems to me war is messy. I mean, this is a kid who was in a region thrown into kind of total anarchy and chose to fight occupiers, whether that was right or wrong, I'm not to say, but that is what he believed. And I think it becomes abundantly clear by 2013, is Al-Sharaa really, truly, at that point, still a terrorist? According to the U.S. government, but everything I've read is he stopped conducting terrorism, became thoroughly committed to overthrowing Assad. Now, that doesn't excuse al-Nusra's suicide bombing in Syria, but my understanding is that he did split from ISIS, as you mentioned. They did go to war. What else do people want? It just seems like, you're right, emotion is blinding us from being able to proceed to the future. If we can... could you imagine this attitude? I mean, so we have significantly less beef with the Syrians than we did the Germans or the Japanese. Could you imagine this attitude after World War II? Right? I mean, that's crazy. So
but that's why I say it's emotional, because there's not a lot of rationality tied up in it. Like, again, for somebody that hates Al-Sharaa and doesn't like this, or doesn't like the removal of the sanctions, cool. What's the solution? Like, do you have an idea that we've been sitting on for 11 years now and just like the Civil War couldn't sort it out? Right. Like, the Syrian people couldn't sort it out. Russia couldn't sort it out. The Iranians couldn't sort it out. The United States couldn't sort it out. Israel couldn't sort it out. It seems like Syria has figured it out. What are we going to do instead? Like, okay, give it a shot.
I 100% agree with you. And I wonder if the sanctions relief will come through. It definitely seems like MBS with Al-Sharaa seemed to convince Trump to do so, and that's why he said so. I'll be interested to see if that actually happens. So
it should. To use your World War II example, imagine that we had a bunch of sanctions against the Nazi Party, and then the Nazi Party was dissolved, and we maintained those sanctions against the state of Germany after the fact. It's like, well, hold on. The whole reason we put these into place, that entity is gone. Like, the whole reason these sanctions went into place was the Assad regime over the years. Like, they're gone. It makes sense that those sanctions... It would have been weirder, and it's been odd that the sanctions have stayed in place. It would have been weirder to see those re-upped. Because, like, what exactly is our beef with Syria right now? They're actively trying to purge terrorist groups out of multiple parts of their country. There's still some shady collusion at times in some of these areas. Relationships we probably don't like very much, but it maintains the peace. But the idea that we're going to punish the entire country, like, it doesn't help us at all.
And the rumor on the street is that Israel and Syria are negotiating an entry into the Abraham Accords, that Syria will pretty soon recognize Israel as a country. Now, that doesn't mean it solves all the disputes, but it does mean that, that's a normal interaction, right? A normal relationship. And so if they're making all the right moves, I just don't I don't see why we need to get all, up in arms about it.
Giuliani,
Right?
21st century leader, man. Yeah.
What do you think? Is it true that he read How Nations Fail?
I don't know.
And that is what radicalized him towards democracy?
I have no idea.
Is it true that it seems, do you believe his heart is democratic? There's an old story. Bill Clinton was talking to Boris Yeltsin, and he said, after Putin gets elected, he looked at Yeltsin in the eyes. He said, I looked deep into Putin's eyes, and I could tell you, that man does not have democracy in his soul. Have you looked into Giuliani's eyes and see if he has democracy deep in his soul?
Yeah, I don't know that that's the right test, because I think countries can do fine around the world. We've learned trying to promote democracy in certain countries doesn't do the trick. And it's not what they want. It doesn't work with their culture, with their history, with their whatever it might be. So I don't really care all that much if Giuliani has democracy in his soul. I don't know. I can't see much in those eyes. There's a lot of war in those eyes. It does look like, from what I can tell, it seems like he cares about Syria. That's the reason he left Iraq after he was let out of jail. It seems like he's been trying to do right by the people that he's been in charge of. And given the opportunity, what I like so far is, given the opportunity to exact vengeance and take total control, he appears to have backed off a bit, which is, I feel like, always a test of any leader. And we'll see how that plays out long term. But anybody who takes over a country after a civil war can kind of do what they want for a period of time. He didn't do that. He started to hand off authority, and I like that. Whether it ends up being an actual democracy or not, I'm sure is yet to see. But I think it's heading in the right direction. I think we're seeing that. I guess the alternative would be, what more do you want to see in a situation like this? I guess that he steps down entirely, completely removes himself from anything. That probably wasn't realistic. But I don't know. I think, maybe I'll have to eat my words later. But for the time being, I think Syria is in a good place with Al-Sharaa, and it's probably a net win for everybody.
Absolutely agree. Power does not corrupt. Power reveals. So we will see what he ends up doing here in the future. But Qatar has been in the news here at home and abroad for 1,000 million different reasons. And one of which, the $400 million reason, is President Trump has accepted a gift for them for a $400 million palace in the sky, as they call it. It's a jet. Now, a new report says that they've been trying to get rid of this thing for years now, and now they're just going to gift it to Trump, and then he's going to take it home. After he uses it as Air Force One, he's going to take it home to his presidential library afterwards, so it will not serve as his Air Force One. Now, there's a bit of conflict over this. Trump has been rejecting that classification. He says it's being donated to the DOD, and then he's going to use it as his Air Force One, which this argument that it's for the country, not him, doesn't work if he takes it home with him. But that was like a debate for 2 days of this week, and then we got everything. You know how it goes in the news cycle. Thoughts on this and thoughts on the Qatar trip as a whole?
I know there's a lot of back and forth about keeping it or not keeping it, all of that. I don't even think you need to get there. We were talking about the mode of transportation for a leader of the leader of our government. If you have a military official traveling to a foreign country, they don't, when we have somebody touch down, we secure all of that, right? We've got our vehicles that offload from the aircraft. We provide all of that to make sure that we're not putting our generals, the director of the CIA, or whoever it might be, in heavily bugged environments when we can avoid it. There's certain times you cannot avoid it. When Witkoff is going to Moscow, there's only so much you can do there. The dude's just surrounded by bugs 24/7. There's no reason that we should voluntarily put the president and senior decision makers in an environment that could easily be bugged, and we don't have the ability to, it would take a while to sweep that entire thing and make sure there's absolutely nothing wrong top to bottom. I just don't know why you would do that. Take all the other stuff. I don't care that it's a gift. Use something else. I don't like that. That part That part seems odd. It does, though, bigger picture. It feels like we're in a very transactional model of foreign affairs. And I'm kind of mixed, if I'm being honest. I don't like it because it feels very much pay for play, but it also feels like strangely transparent, if that makes sense.
Oh, what do you mean?
Like they're just straight up giving money and they're probably going to get something in return. Like, instead of having to read between the lines and, like, what is this negotiation and how does this affect this country down the road? It's like, no, they just gave a $400 million jet, so that's why we ABC. I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm saying it kind of opens up. We get to see a little more clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is transparent, but just because you're, like, corrupting the open, you're just like, oh, okay. Well, at least we can see it, I guess. I don't know. I mean, my viewpoint on it is, like, it's very strange to me that, like, we're taking the plane, because, like, we have one in production, and by taking this plane, we kind of take, for an administration that's so focused on bringing jobs back, we're just taking a plane off the assembly line, are we not? By taking this other plane. Like, you're right, like, the spying, the bugging. I also just, why, Air Force One's fine. I know that, like, the seats are from the 90s or whatever, but, I mean, we've all seen the interior. You've flown on Air Force One. It seems fine.
It's old, yeah. This is something that I have a really hard time with when it's a political thing, mostly. I mean, I guess it happens everywhere, but, like, I have a really hard time with understanding why these people don't just say, you know what, this is going to be more harm than good. It's not worth it. So, like, the plane is a great example. The amount of hoops that people are having to jump through right now to explain why, no, actually it's a good thing. Like, just don't, it's not necessary. Just don't do that. Like, you are not forced into this position. You could have just said, that seems like it might cause a bit of a headache, so we're just not going to go down that route. And you can find this Hunter Biden taking the board position at a Ukrainian company, right? Same thing. Like, just don't do that. Like, can you justify it? I don't know. Or do you know that this is going to end up being something you're going to be questioned about for the next 20 years? Yeah. So just don't do it. Just like that. Just move on to the next thing. And it is so frustrating. I feel like this happens over and over and over again. People do something that is sketchy, to say the least, and then they spend all this time and energy trying to deflect and explain it away. It's like, just don't do the sketchy thing to begin with, and you'd have been fine. Like,
Well, their new defense is that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France, which I would like to point out, which people have done this, so I'm not the first, but people have pointed out that the Statue of Liberty was not a gift from France. Statue of Liberty was a gift from two private individuals, to the United States, and then we put it on display. But it was not a gift from France, and no one got anything in return. So, yeah, I just don't... And are they arguing that this plane is going to be equivalent to the Statue of Liberty? This is the most expensive gift a president has ever taken. Axios had this beautiful graphic where they showed the gifts that presidents have taken, and, like, all of them have to be approved by Congress, of course, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But it's like Obama, $2 million, Trump, first term, $1 million, Biden, $200,000, and then Trump with his $400 million, and the graphic just goes down all the way like this, and it just says keep scrolling, and then it ends. And as far as I know, they're arguing that Congress doesn't even need to approve the gift, which it's in the Constitution that Congress has to approve all foreign gifts, and they're saying no, they don't have to. To me, this seems bonkers. What's going on? And you're right. Is it really worth the... I thought Ben Shapiro argued something similar this week. He's just like, is this really worth the hassle? I don't think so. I mean, wouldn't it be the strangest hill he's died on? But
so exhausting, man. So exhausting. Let's get back into some of the foreign policy stuff, though. So Qatar,
yes,
seems like they are... I mean, again... They know the game, and they have for quite a while. They appear to be trying to play that game. Like, we're just going to, great, what do we need to do to get in the good graces of the president? Something that's been on display in recent days is people just reminding folks that Qatar has helped to fund Hamas and a lot of organizations throughout the Middle East that we do not consider friendly. Qatar has found this is something when Trump first issued his threats against Hamas. I don't know if you remember this. Early on, he said, "Release the hostages or else," and people were like, "Oh my God, what is the or else?" We don't have a lot of cards to play in Gaza specifically to leverage Hamas. I thought we might actually go after officials in Qatar and clamp down there and say this is the funding. Some of the Hamas leadership is there. I thought that might be the direction we could go because we could. And we have not. We've kind of gone the other direction. I'm just bringing that up as like this is where Haniyeh lived, right? The leader of Hamas was regularly making public appearances in Qatar while Hamas holds American citizens hostage. So there's a rough past with Qatar, and they seem to be doing a pretty good job of working their way out from behind that.
They are like evil Switzerland. Like, if you take, like, they are this hub for diplomacy and, you know, neutrality, if you will. But they're just like evil Switzerland. It's bonkers to me. But what's even crazier to me is that in 2022, Biden named them a non-NATO major ally, which I have no idea. Granted, 10-7 hadn't happened yet, but that to me is so bizarre that such a thing happened, right? But you're right. They know how to play the game. I saw a report basically saying in the first term, Jared Kushner's father-in-law, not his father-in-law is Trump. His father himself, Jared Kushner's father, tried to get Qatar to approve some real estate deal, and they said, no, this doesn't work for us. See you later. And then what happens is the White House pressures Saudi Arabia and the UAE to blockade Qatar, and they were going to invade, and they had those plans, you know, to dig the canal to turn Qatar into an island.
Yeah.
Just lunacy. And then Qatar said, okay, fine, we'll do the deal with Jared Kushner's dad. And then all of a sudden the blockade and everything goes away, and Rex Tillerson saves the day. They're saying Qatar learned their lesson this time around. They've made this $1.5 billion deal with the Trump organization to develop, to develop a golf course with Trump properties there. They also invested in the cryptocurrency, and on top of that, the Gulf states are all tripping over each other to announce these fake investments in the U.S. economy. They're saying Qatar pledged $1.4 trillion. That's bigger than their sovereign wealth fund. It's also bigger than their GDP. Same with Saudi Arabia with $800 billion, and then the UAE. I mean, they're all competing. Who can create a bigger made-up number? And the UAE with $1.6 trillion. This money is never coming, but they go there, they shake hands, and that takes a story over whatever bribery is going on here. But you're right, Qatar knows how to play the game, and they're playing it very well. They have given the president and his family everything they want, and in exchange, they're just... what are they getting in exchange? Are they just being left alone? I don't quite... I know what Saudi and UAE are getting out of it, but I don't know what Qatar is getting out of it.
We'll see. I don't think... If you view it in the light of buying influence, it doesn't have to be a direct goal right now. You just want influence for the future. So maybe they just saw this as an opportunity to strike while the iron is hot. I, again, can't blame these countries. If I'm in their shoes, I'm probably doing the exact same thing. The blame is here in the United States for allowing that situation to happen, unfortunately. It does feel like, I've used the term transactional, but it feels like ideology is kind of dying, if that makes sense. When we're seeing more and more of this. I made a video earlier today about the Iran nuclear negotiations, and I'm starting to get the feeling that saying that we have a deal done is more important than what's in the actual agreement. So there's talk right now that the Iran deal is a framework to continue talking. And it's like, well, hold on. That doesn't do anybody any good. That leaves us exactly where we are. Yeah, that leaves us right where we are today.
This is the fourth this week. Yeah.
So if the goal is to say we got a deal, but not actually move anything forward, or I shouldn't say that. I'm sure everybody wants to actually get something big done, but some of these, it takes longer and it's more complex. Trade deals, right? We were talking a few weeks ago. There's hundreds, thousands of pages that need to be gone through. It's not that simple. But if the focus is just getting these deals done, it's less about ideology and trying to get to maybe what has historically been in the U.S.'s best interest and more about just getting to an end state, even if that end state is temporary. So Iran, again, maybe a good example. Big picture, we want Iran to not have a nuclear weapon, and we don't want them to have the ability to get one in the future. If we sign some sort of nuclear agreement that kicks the can down the road for 8 to 10 years, yeah, that meets our objectives in the short term, and we get to say we have a deal, we win, but in 8 to 10 years, we're back having the same conversation, and they might be closer. They might even have a bomb at that point. So we're not actually advancing American interests. We're just kind of short-term wins after short-term wins. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I agree with your point that ideology is dead. It seems abundantly clear to me that every president has had an ideology, right, in terms of guiding his foreign policy. And that, and you kind of see it in Europe now, that foreign policy ideology is guided by the people, right? Like, there is, in a different America, back in the past, a world where the American people would not tolerate, this kind of relationship with Qatar or Saudi Arabia, any human rights abuser, they'd be pretty upset about it, and U.S. politicians wouldn't be able to do it. But for part of the population, I don't think it's 50%. I think maybe it's 20%. But their ideology is just Trump, so they just don't, it just doesn't matter. So I think to a certain extent that's right. I also think we are trading out the future for short-term deals for trying to look good for getting a headline. It is bizarre to me, and I think we are nearing a place where we were in 2021, where whoever comes in after this is going to have to do a full-court press. There was a new poll out this week from the Democracy Index, which is run by the former Secretary General of NATO, Rasmussen. I don't know if you've seen him. He kind of looks like he's played James Bond before. And handsome guy. I don't know if he's French. I don't know what nationality he is, but maybe. Anyway, so he releases a survey, and it shows that China is more popular than the United States by 20 points worldwide. And I just thought, how much of that is because of these fake deals? How much of it is just because... Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, we had a 75% people viewed us positively, 75% of the world, and now it's 45%. I mean, it's just a straight line down. So I don't know what we're doing here. It just seems like it's all about the Twitter feed.
The Houthis are another great example here. All right, so we've declared victory over the Houthis, this ceasefire agreement, and it's very short-term focused. Now, don't get me wrong. I like that American service members are not coming under fire on a daily basis. I felt like it was just a matter of time before one of those missiles or drones struck home and we were going to have a loss of life for the first time in that operation on the U.S. side. But we didn't resolve that problem at all. We fought that fight for a few months, said this isn't working, and backed off. So, yes, technically the Houthis right now are not attacking American ships, and they're not attacking American military vessels. They still are a terrorist organization, as designated by this administration. They are still holding hostage the Red Sea, saying they are going to blockade any ships that have anything to do with Israel. Historically, we know that means they just kind of fire whatever they want. And they're slinging missiles across the Middle East to hit civilian airports in Israel. It has not been resolved. We have not fixed that. And I would argue the biggest issue with the Houthis is not what they're doing right now. It's the lesson they learned. They got international attention, and they withstood the pressure of the United States by just firing a couple drones into the Red Sea. The next time they want something, what are they going to do? They're going to fire a couple drones into the Red Sea. Are you kidding me? Like, they know the power that they have. We have not fixed that. So, we celebrated. I just saw earlier, maybe yesterday, Secretary Hegseth was posting like victory accomplished. We did it. Peace through strength. Look what we did in the Red Sea. And I just like, it's not a victory. We kicked that can down the road. And yes, today it makes for a good headline. This week, maybe even this month, it means that we have to spend less resources, fewer lives at risk in that arena. But we didn't solve anything. We didn't fix anything. It is the same, if not worse, than it was before we started in a lot of ways.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. It just seems as though, you know what I think it is? It is a media strategy that has overtaken foreign policy, and it's dedicated itself to appealing to low information, high engagement people. I mean, is that how it is? Because it seems so when you and I talk, and then I talk to any of the other creators in the space, even like some of my friends, I wonder, am I just associating people who are in the loop? Because then I go online, I read these comments from people, and it just seems like I've entered another world sometimes. Because to me, it seems like people are like, yeah, we're not solving anything, and this is pointless. But then you go on, you read some of these comments on some of these other sites, and it's just like, there's a whole other world out there where all this makes total sense, and we're not understanding the masterful chess play here.
I see people regularly, when I talk about the Houthis, people regularly argue in the comments, hey, we did it. We fixed this problem. They agreed to not shoot at American ships anymore. And my argument is that was never our original position. That was never the thing that we were going
complaint. Yeah.
No. Like, that's not a good thing. But the Houthis started shooting at American ships because we started intercepting their munitions that they were firing at other vessels, and then we started to attack them. So, like, if you look at any of the statements, it's always been about restoring the freedom of navigation and stopping the threat that is the Houthi terrorist organization. None of that's been resolved. But I see it day in and day out, people arguing that we did it. It's been accomplished. It's like, well, we changed. Something was agreed to, but that's not what our original goal was, and it doesn't really move the ball forward at all. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of the media piece, which shouldn't be a shock because we kind of see this playing out through other portions of the government. The media piece is more important than anything else. Getting the win.
Oh, it's very like the style is very authoritarian, right? Where people in democracies, they get, I can't accept this deal, I'm gonna get blah blah blah. Whereas Putin and Xi and Kim, they just go to their people and go, we won, and they all go, woo. Maybe Xi gets less pushback, or maybe Xi gets more pushback than the other two, but they just go, yeah, all right, we won. That's just what it feels like. So you're right. I think media strategy overtaking foreign policy. But speaking of that, Saudi Arabia, Trump was there. He met MBS, who famously killed Jamal Khashoggi, but we'll get into that later. And they signed what I saw was called the largest weapons deal in history. Do you know more about that?
I don't. I've not seen a lot of details coming out of this. Again, the top line headlines are all just really, really big numbers. I'll have to look more into the actual defense agreement.
Well, yeah, and so they also made a fake investment of $800 billion to the United States.
Why do you say fake investment? Why do you say fake investment?
Because, so I was talking to these two economists. I know Kyla Scanlon, you know her, and then Joey Politano, and he writes a Substack. And what they were saying is that essentially they do not have this money to invest into the United States. These are such ginormous numbers. Even the $600 billion Saudi Arabia pledged in Trump's first term it hasn't ever been invested into the United States. They haven't even begun talks on it. So, I mean, these are just huge numbers they throw out there, and they say, we're going to do it, and Trump claps, and he throws it to the SEALs, and they also clap. But, like, the UAE doesn't have $1.6 trillion to throw at the United States. It's bigger than their sovereign wealth fund. It's 3 times bigger than their GDP. What are they going to, and they're saying this over 10 years, are they going to give, 20% of their GDP every year to the United States? So you see what I'm saying here is that these numbers are so ginormous and they are not that wealthy. Even the United States investing $1.2 trillion into something, another country, is lunacy. Especially when you think our federal budget every year is $6 trillion over 10 years. I mean, that's crazy. That's a ton of money. So that's why they're fake investments.
Gotcha.
Now,
Yeah.
maybe they will happen, and I'll have to eat crow here.
The
But
number's not real. There might be some sort of new investment, but
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the number's definitely not right. But so they made some kind of weapons deal. Woo, he had a whole show. He gave a speech. People said the speech was good. I didn't listen to it. Did you?
The Trump speech,
Yeah, and Saudi.
a little bit. I clipped some parts of it today. I mean, there was a big part about like kind of not we're stepping back from the Middle East, but we're not going to be interventionalist as much anymore, and saying that the nation builders and the people trying to intervene in their affairs caused problems and made it worse. And talking about how the people in the room there are the ones that are going to lead the Middle East forward and have the right idea, and they built their countries up from scratch. So I guess there was a little pushback previously. Obama did something similar when he first entered office, and people interpreted his statement of saying, like, we're not going to intervene anymore. This is for you all to decide. And the you all was interpreted as like the people on the street, and that was argued as one of the reasons why the Arab Spring kicked off. So I guess some people, some key leaders there were like, what the hell was that, man? Trump this time appears to have said something similar. We're backing off. This is your show, but your show is the princes in the room, the leadership in the room.
That's interesting. Yeah, he seems to think that they're going to be these global leaders. I could not disagree more. I think the Gulf states are rich right now. I don't think they're going to be a relevant player in the future. I just don't. I don't buy. I'm not bullish on it. I think there's not a whole lot going on there. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think they are the future? To me, I don't see. For one, Saudi Arabia is a fiefdom kingdom straight out of the Middle Ages. They have kings, they have lords. There's some lunacy going on over there. Now, the UAE, we've been very nice place,
Beautiful place.
but yeah, they also have a king, but they are very modern. I think. Now, there are some ethical objections, of course, I have, but they are very modern in the way they go about things. And I would say, I don't know about Qatar, but Saudi, definitely not the future. Maybe the UAE, but I don't buy what Trump is selling here. I don't buy what they're cooking. What do you think?
I don't have any issue with us getting closer with and improving relations with a variety of countries in the Middle East. My only thought is at the expense of what? And right now it does look like it's at the expense of Europe. I'm not sure that's a valuable trade-off for the United States. Maybe long-term, and maybe that's the gamble that Trump is making, but it seems like we're taking the energy that traditionally would be with some of our historic allies, especially in Europe, and we're directing that at the Middle East. I don't know. It's a risky trade-off right now. How about Asia? Let's spend some more time and energy over there. That seems like an up-and-coming market, if I've ever seen one, right?
Well, true, but I mean, we're too busy putting tariffs on them, so
That's true, yeah.
I will say, interesting about Asia, in that poll we were talking about where China's more popular, that is like our number one region, where people like us more than they like China. They don't view us positively, don't get it twisted, but they view us more positively than they view China. So, not net positive, but yeah, it's interesting that we just seem to be drifting towards this region. I know there's a big conflation over what benefits him as an individual versus what benefits the country, and I would say closer ties with Europe. I mean, Elon Musk has said this, it's maybe the only thing we agree on, is that a unified union of free travel, free commerce between Europe and the United States and Canada would be marvelous. It would unleash economic potential never seen before, but at this point, it seems far-fetched. Maybe we'll get one of those with Qatar and Kuwait. maybe Syria. But now we go down to the UAE, and I mean, do you have anything to say about the UAE? I mean, I feel like we kind of hit the bricks here with Saudi and Qatar. All right, well, so our poll result, we did a poll last week on India, Pakistan. We have incredible timing. Every time we go about these things, they just end. So we asked them, how do you think this will end? Yeah, we asked, how do you think this will end? Fade away, full war, India wins, full war, Pakistan wins, or nuclear war? and 70% of the audience said it'll fade away. I think that's what I said. 25% said a full war, India wins, and 5% said a nuclear war. It turns out the fadeaway people were right. That thing just ended.
So far, yeah.
So far, yeah, but just turns out that thing ended real fast. Also, I have a question for you. I thought about this while we were talking about it earlier in the episode. Do you think Al-Sharaa watches the show? Because the Trump Tower in Damascus that he promised him was our idea. We said that. Yeah. We said that, and then he's over here offering the Trump, and Trump goes, "This is great. Let me meet the guy." So, do you think he watches? Do you think he'd come on as a guest?
If I had to guess, I would say yes. We're probably one of like 3 information sources that I would say he consumes.
Yeah, I think so
Smart
too.
Money.
How crazy is that? But so we have some questions from the viewers. So Preston, start off. They keep asking week after week. I've been ignoring it, but the masses are too loud now. Why have you gone hatless in your videos and on the podcast?
The reason I wore a hat every day was kind of random too. I just kept doing it. When I started doing this and kind of working for myself, I liked that I didn't have to like comb my hair at all in the morning and that I could wear a hat. So I did. It was just like I can do this now. And then it just kind of continued for a few years, and I found myself wearing a hat like all day, every day. And then I took it off for some events. You know, when you're going to UAE for an arms show, or going to the Pentagon, or going to NATO or something, there's no hats there. And I just thought, maybe take the hat off a little bit more, and that's it. Yeah.
Nothing
I don't know.
too deep?
Nothing too deep. I wore one for a while. Now I'm not. Yeah. I did get, as soon as I took it off, I had a lot of people think that I had like dyed my hair or something. I don't know. It's the same hair. But yeah, not too deep. Still got all the hats on the shelf. Yeah.
Hell yeah. The question number 2 is, can someone explain how we're about to get a $1 trillion military budget while at the same time downsizing the force and cutting programs?
Okay. A couple things. First off, it sounds like that $1 trillion budget is a bit inflated. Not to say it's all a media show, but it does sound like they're mixing a couple different items together to get to $1 trillion. And there's some Republican lawmakers that are pushing back, saying that's not actually the number you guys are going for. You're mixing together like some older programs and some different programs and tying it into this one to be able to say that it is a $1 trillion defense budget. So that's one piece. Another piece, you got to take into account some inflation. Things are just going to cost more this year than they did last year. But yeah, it's a lot of money. I think we probably need to spend more time on the fact that the DoD is not passing an audit. I don't understand why that's controversial. It's frustrating to me that it's so controversial. Like, let's just find out where all the money and this isn't even speculating that there's some conspiracy or something. I think there's probably just a lot of misuse of funds. We're probably spending money where we don't need to when you have that much money coming in. Let's document where it all goes. And as I'm rambling, I realize that I may not have answered that question at all, Ben.
I have an answer for you. Well, the $1 trillion, how we're going to get there is by putting another engine in the F-35 and removing all the stealth off the fighter jets. That's how we're going to. That's how we're going to peel the stealth off, and we're going to put another engine, and we're going to put 7 engines into the F-22 Super, as he calls it. So that's how we're going to get to $1 trillion. No, the real answer to your question, I don't. So the current Republican budget, I believe, does not show $1 trillion, and you're right. They're combining a bunch of different things. I think it's just a number he decided on. It'd be like what, $150 billion increase, $200 billion
increase on or about, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where they're getting the money for it. I don't know where the money is going. You could say R&D, but we've kind of destroyed that. So it's all a mystery. I am willing to bet it's not. Do you want to bet? Do you want to bet it's not $1 trillion when it's all said and done?
No, because there'll be some. No, because it'll end up being like, it'll be the same thing as everything, man. It'd be confusing, and they'll take all these different data points, and we won't know for real. I want to say the reason that we don't have a clear answer to this yet is because the budget has not been made public. So all we have is the top line number. So this isn't Ben and I trying to speculate on something that is out there we just haven't read. It hasn't been made public. So like there genuinely is not a definitive answer yet as to what that budget will entail. So it could be massive increases in a couple different areas. You know, it's a small pay increase, it looks like, for the soldiers across the board, but it's a pay increase, not enough to warrant a 13% overall increase. But yeah, we'll see. We should see more of that here before too long.
Absolutely. This one comes from a viewer named Mac. Do you have a favorite battle or war?
This is a little bit of a cop-out, but I'm fascinated with D-Day, World War II. A combination. There's so much that happened there, and I like that we can go back and step foot on that territory, and it's a kind of area where, I don't know, there's just something about it, start to finish. That one has always been some of my favorite books are about D-Day, about that period of time specifically in World War II.
I fully agree with you. You know what I think it is? I think it's the founding mythos, the founding myth of the West as we know it. Like the idea of a North America and a Europe jointly together with Australia and Japan and South Korea. I think that's why it's so fascinating. You know, my great-grandfather, his name was Julius Caesar Wheeler, was in the 82nd Airborne.
There we
and
go.
They, as you know, they parachuted in the night before, and they were all supposed to be together, but then there's a storm and there's flak, and they all get separated. And so he was in charge. They kind of just took over, you know, because what did the Nazis say at the time? That there was just chaos, that they were just random Americans all over the place giving them a hard time. He held down a bridge, and that final scene in Saving Private Ryan is inspired by not his actions personally, but the actions of the group he was with along some kind of bridge. I have a book here in French that I'm supposed to be reading, but I got tired of doing the Google Translate. Sorry, sorry, great grandpa. It was too much of a hassle. I know you got shot at, but it's just too much of a hassle for me to translate via picture. But this last one is, what was the biggest motivation for this podcast? How did it get started? It came around at such a time that I felt was most appropriate. I have enjoyed it ever since. Thank you. Well,
you want to take it or you want me to?
I'll give it a go. So we had talked about podcasts.
We'll see if we have different answers too.
Yes. Okay. This is good. We had talked about podcasts for a while, and after I remember it was election day, the day after election day, we have a talk, and I was pretty defeated. I was just like, not this shit again. And Preston and I talk, and I just think, well, it's up to us. I mean, we have to. I'm a big transatlantis. I think Preston is too. And I was like, well, we have to defend what we think is good U.S. foreign policy, this idea that America can be a force for good in the world, and we need to protect it, and it's important that we get our voices out there. We both have two very large voices, and we thought this is important to do it, and so that's why it came to be when it did. And, of course, the rest is history. It turned out to be wildly successful. It's the most popular geopolitical podcast based in Chicago and Tennessee. So, pretty huge numbers-wise there. But what is your reason? Why do you think this started?
Yeah, a little more business-focused kind of strategy. Because obviously Ben and I have been in the space for a little while, and we do make content outside of this. But for me, it was also driven by the election, in that we saw really just President Trump and Vice President Vance, not as much on the Democrat side, but we saw the rise of podcasts and these guys going on shows left and right. And it wasn't just them, but a lot of the surrogates. So I should say in terms of candidates, it was definitely more Trump and Vance doing the podcast themselves, but across the board, surrogates showing up on all these different shows. And those are the ones getting quoted in traditional media. Like, it was these 2-hour, 3-hour long conversations. And it was like, okay, I've been consuming podcasts for a long time. It's how I like to take in information. But if we're actually seeing leadership in the new administration using podcasts as a tool to get their message out and to reach a certain audience, then it's only a matter of time before that penetrates out to all these different niches, like national security, foreign affairs, international relations, things like that. So I thought, well, there's not really one like that right now. There's a lot of podcasts out there, but not one maybe focused week in and week out with some younger hosts talking about national security. So let's fill that gap. And in the span of 1, 2, 5, 10 years, maybe this is the show that, somebody's getting ready for their confirmation for Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, and they got to come on the Unclassified show because they know that's how they reach the largest audience in this space on podcasts. So it just felt like an opening, and that it's getting more and more acceptance. We figured may as well jump in.
It's really interesting how much the geopolitical international relations space has evolved, because I felt like when I started in December 2020 on TikTok, and then when did you start? Did you start around the same time?
Yeah, about the same time.
Yeah, there was just not a geopolitical space that existed.
Right.
It was just all guys in monotone voices. They would talk like this, and they'd say, "Nothing will ever happen. Nothing ever happens. The United States will be in Afghanistan forever." And that's just kind of how it was. It was boring, and no one cared. And to be fair, the world was boring. Nothing ever did happen. The U.S. was the king, and those were the rules. But 2020, things start shaking up, so we kind of entered, and it's interesting to see it sprout so massively. And now, of course, I think the biggest among us is Johnny Harris, right? So, such a fascinating evolution of it. But hopefully we become the big podcast. Do you listen to Pod Save the World?
I don't know.
I'm a fan of it. I like Ben Rhodes, that's why. And I think at this point, really our only true competition. So,
here we go.
Not to insult
Confidence.
anybody. Not to insult anybody. But anyways, folks, thank you for listening. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, give it 5 stars. And we'll see you next week to talk about,
Whatever
God
happens
knows
next
what.
week.
Yeah, God knows what. All right, bye, guys.